Let's learn about relation between different angle pairs. We have learnt about different pairs of angles. These are adjacent angles, supplementary angles, linear pairs, vertically opposite angles, and complementary angles. What is common in all these types of angles? They all are pairs. And when we talk about a pair, we're talking about exactly two angles. Is there any relationship between these pairs of angles? For example, are all linear pairs adjacent angles? Or the converse, are all adjacent angles linear pairs? Let's explore the relationships between various pairs of angles in a little detail. Let's start with adjacent angles. So this circle here represents adjacent angles. Let me draw a pair of adjacent angles. We can see that these angles are adjacent. Let's draw a linear pair here. Now, are the angles constituting a linear pair are adjacent as well? Yes, these are adjacent also. That is why the circle of linear pairs is drawn inside the circle of adjacent angles. So from here we can say all linear pairs are adjacent angles, but the converse is not true. All adjacent angles are not linear pairs. Because we can see here this is a pair of adjacent angles and this is definitely not a linear pair. Now the next thing which comes into our mind is, are all linear pairs supplementary angles? Yes, they are. Because we know sum of angles constituting a linear pair is 180 degrees, that is why linear pairs are supplementary. So that is why the circle of linear pairs is inside supplementary angles also. Next thing which comes into our mind is, are all supplementary angles adjacent? Not all. Only linear pairs are the angles which are supplementary also and adjacent also. That is why the circle representing linear pairs is inside the common region of supplementary angles and adjacent angles. This region is common to both supplementary angles and adjacent angles, and inside this we have linear pairs. In fact, in the common region between the two circles of supplementary angles and adjacent angles, we can draw only linear pairs. The next thing which comes to our mind is, are all supplementary angles linear pairs? No, definitely not. We can see these two angles here. Let's say one is 30 degrees and the other is 150 degrees. These angles are definitely supplementary because their sum is 180 degrees, but these are not a linear pair. Now let's take our attention to complementary angles. We know that complementary angles cannot be supplementary. But can they be adjacent? Of course, yes. Adjacent angles can be complementary, as is the case here. Suppose this angle is 30 degrees and this angle is 60 degrees. Sum of both of them is 90 degrees and they are complementary as well as adjacent. So this type of angles are in the common region between the circle representing complementary angles and adjacent angles. Next thing which comes to our mind is, are all complementary angles adjacent? No, this is not the case. We can have complementary angles which are not adjacent, like these angles. Let's say one is 20 degrees and other is 70 degrees. So the total of these angles is 90 degrees and they are not adjacent but complementary. Now move over to vertically opposite angles. We know that vertically opposite angles are non-adjacent angles. So here we have two vertically opposite angles which are non-adjacent. Can vertically opposite angles be supplementary? Of course, yes. If we have two lines intersecting each other at right angles, then this angle and this angle both will be 90 degrees. Now we can see that these two angles are vertically opposite and their sum is 90 degrees plus 90 degrees, 180 degrees. So these are vertically opposite also and supplementary also. That is why this type of pair of angles is in the common region between vertically opposite angles and supplementary angles. Next, let's explore, can vertically opposite angles be complementary also? Of course they can be. Let's see this pair of angles. If this angle is 45 degrees, then this angle will also be 45 degrees because they are vertically opposite angles, and we can see that this pair of angles is vertically opposite and complementary also, as sum of 45 and 45 will be 90 degrees. That is why this pair of angles is in the common region between vertically opposite angles and complementary angles. Let's summarize what we have learnt here. Linear pairs are adjacent angles as well as supplementary angles. Vertically opposite angles are non-adjacent angles, but they can be supplementary as well as complementary. Supplementary angles cannot be complementary angles and complementary angles cannot be supplementary angles.